Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to all. If you can hear me, maybe you can just give a reaction or just write in the chat box.
Yes,
My
I can
name.
hear you, Doctor.
Okay, all right, good. My name is Dr. Razman, and I will be your master of ceremony today. Welcome to the 4th PBS-MAICSA Colloquium on Corporate Governance. It's a biannual event in collaboration between Putra Business School and the Malaysian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, or famously known as MAICSA. A little bit of background on this colloquium. Our first edition was held on the 27th December 2020 via online platform, and the subsequent 2 editions were also held last year in June and November, also via online platform. And in PBS, since our students have yet to go back to campus, this edition will still be held online. Hopefully, in our next edition, we will have a physical event for the first time. Before we begin the event properly, let me share with you the objective of this colloquium. This colloquium is the platform where our MBA students, especially MBA in corporate governance students, will present their research findings from their MBA project papers, which typically will focus on the latest corporate governance issues. Normally, they will spend around 8 months to do research, not including the 4 months to understand the research methodology aspect of it. And then, once they have finished with their research, they will compile something that looks like a mini thesis and submit it to the PBS office. There is no requirement for them to present to any audience. Therefore, we feel that it's such a shame if all those great research, great findings remain in our library. And this is where we would love to share the findings from the students to the public, especially to the current and alumni of PBS, to the MAICSA members, as well as our partners from other universities and also the general public. So for today, there will be 4 research findings to be presented, just like the previous 3 edition. So now we already have around 16 papers to be presented in this colloquium. So how do we select these presenters? We choose from the good ones, the one that managed to get a very good grade for their project paper. And to make things more interesting, okay, we do not simply ask to just present their findings. With us here, we have 2 esteemed MAICSA members to be our panel member, which I'm going to introduce later. And this MAICSA panel member, they will listen to the presentation and also share their comments and insight, especially the practical and industry insight on the issues. But don't worry, presenters, this is not a Viva session. You already graduated, already passed your project paper. We are not going to retract your grade. So this is not really a Q&A, but sharing to validate or to complement the findings with what the practitioner experience or encounter out there in the industry. So this is to make sure that whenever our MBA students doing this kind of research, we want to make to see the relevancy of such topic. So so we are happy to have all of you joining here. A majority, I think, of this participant consisted of PBS staff and student. and also MAICSA members. All right. So today we are pleased to have yang berbahagia Dato Akbar Moidunny, MAICSA Deputy President and Group Chairman and Managing Director of MINC Corporate Consultant, to give his keynote speech for this colloquium. But before that, I would like to invite our CEO and President, PBS CEO and President, Professor Dr. yang berbahagia, Professor Dr. Azmawani Abdul Rahman, to give her opening speech. Prof, the screen is yours.
All right, the screen is mine or the session is mine? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Ahmed Razman Abdul Latiff, Coordinator of MBA Corporate Governance, Putra Business School. My special address, but I cannot really see here, Dato Akbar Moidunny, Deputy President of MAICSA. Are you here, Dato? Dato ada?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Ah, okay. There you are. Hi. Nice to meet you, Dato.
Likewise, thank you.
All right. Miss Samantha Tai Chan, Council Member and Education Committee.
Hi.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Hello. Kenneth or Miss Leong Aiwa here? Kenneth, right? Nice to meet you. Yeah. Okay. Unmute yourself. Hello.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. Good morning, Professor.
Okay. Good morning. Esteemed colleague from UITM, Usim Uttar, and Tar University College. Okay. And fellow students and participants of the 4th PBS-MAICSA Colloquium on Corporate Governance. Good morning and welcome. Let me give a bit on the background, as mentioned by Associate Professor Dr. Ahmed Razman. Of course, I'm very pleased as the host of this annual colloquium. Give me a great pleasure to welcome all of you. Yeah, and I would like to address a bit on some of the background. It has gone a long way since October 2011. When Putra Business School, the then Graduate School of Management, we first started offering MBA in corporate governance. So far we have produced around, under this program, 135 of them have been awarded by the ICSA certificate by MAICSA. Yeah. So we are expecting 15 more students undergoing this program to receive their certificate by this year or end of next year. So let me tell you a bit about my background. I take a little bit of a time. I was previously Director of Corporate Strategy and Communications at University Putra, Malaysia. So therefore, I clearly understand the importance of good governance. It is a cornerstone for many main functions in the institution, such as on the risk governance and compliance, yeah, as a corporate strategist. So therefore, understanding and following the rules, principles, and setting up like policies, and that can actually regulate the process better. Because once you have system in place, without good governance, you cannot implement, yeah, and most importantly, it is very, very fundamental, yeah, good governance to achieve organizational vision, mission, and their strategic goals. Yeah. Therefore, moving forward, we want to see more students in this program due to the importance of good governance in managing effective organizations. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this important colloquium, our panel speaker and also the students' presentation will share their thought and insight. And I'm sure this will be very enlightening and useful to all of you. So I do wish that you will have a
Student baru Putra Business School.
And productive session. Last but not least, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone. You can be anywhere else, but you choose to be here. You choose to be here and to spend your Saturday morning to attend this colloquium. And to the organizing team, thank you for the effort that you have put in and to make this event a reality. With that, thank you. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Razman.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Azmawani. Before I invite Yang Berbahagia, Dato Akbar Moidunny, to give his keynote speech, I would like to give a little bit of introduction on him. It seems that every year his profile getting longer and longer, but don't worry, I'll do my best to capture the gist of it. Yang Berbahagia, Dato Akbar Moidunny, is the Deputy President of MAICSA and was appointed to the position back in July 2022. Dato Akbar is a member of the council, having been re-elected in June 2018, October 2020, and July 2022. He was co-opted to council in January 2000 and was first elected to council in December 2001. He was also the president of MAICSA from May 2007 to May 2009 and has served as deputy president, vice president, and honorary secretary. He is currently the chairman of the Conference Organizing Committee for 2022-2023, Membership Committee, Consultation Task Force, and also National Investigation Group. He is one of the Institute representative on the Corporate Practice Consultative Forum and the technical committee set up by the Companies Commission of Malaysia, as well as Institute representative in Company Secretaries Consultative Group. He obtained his ICSA from London in 1986 and has a valid practicing license for the past 36 years. He is also the Group Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the MIC Group of Companies, Malaysia, since 1986, which provide corporate secretarial and governance consultancy services to more than 1,000 companies. Looking at his professional experience, which spans a period of more than 36 years, he has been involved in all facets of secretarial assignments, including consultancy, restructuring, due diligence for both multinationals and local corporations. His clients comprise of private and public companies, and he is involved in regular speaking engagement at forum on corporate legislation and act as mediator on corporate dispute. Dato Akbar also is a member of the Malaysian Institute of Management and member of the Display Board of the Bar Council Malaysia. So without much further ado, I would like to invite Yang Berbahagia, Dato Akbar Moidunny, Deputy President of MAICSA, to give his keynote speech. Dato?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Razman. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang Berbahagia, Professor Dr. Azmawani Abdul Rahman, President and CEO of Putra Business School, PBS, Prof. Dr. Huam Hontat, PBS Director of Non-Thesis-Based Program, Associate Professor Dr. Ahmed Razman Abdul Latiff, Program Coordinator of MBA in Corporate Governance, and of course, both our distinguished panelists, Ms. Samantha Tai, Chan, and Mr. Kenneth Khean. Distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen. Very good morning to everyone. As what Prof. Dr. Azmawani said earlier, you have chosen to be with us today, and that's an excellent choice. So on behalf of the Malaysian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, MAICSA, and Putra Business School, PBS, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the 4th PBS-MAICSA Colloquium on Corporate Governance. I would like to thank PBS for inviting MAICSA to officiate this colloquium and deliver the keynote address today. Distinguished guests and participants, MAICSA is a division of Chartered Governance Institute, CGI, UK. It provides assurance that the world-class standards of governance can be achieved through its international qualifying standards that makes it as the only chartered professional body in Malaysia which is dedicated to support governance professionals. By being a member of MAICSA, the governance professionals are able to obtain recognition in Malaysia and internationally. They are also able to advance their career across borders, commit to continuing professional developments through training programs that are current, uphold a code of conduct and ethics, which places them at the forefront of the governance industry. MAICSA has been in existence in Malaysia for 63 years. and has over 5,000 members in total, comprising 4,200 qualified members and 1,600 students on its register. In an attempt to achieve higher membership growth and to strengthen educational ties with higher education providers, the Institute constantly looked into developing strategic alliance with local institutions to promote the Chartered Governance Qualifying Program. As a result of this initiative, the Institute has so far signed collaborative agreements with 5 public and private universities to offer the collaborative master degree program that awards dual qualifications with the master degree by the university and grad CG by MAICSA. Well, it is indeed heartening to note that Putra Business School was the first university in Malaysia to collaborate with the Institute in 2011 and has so far produced about 135 graduates who have been admitted as graduates of MAICSA and have subsequently become associate and fellow members of the Institute over the years. We hope to see many more students taking advantage of this opportunity to obtain an internationally recognized professional qualification simultaneously with their master's degree qualification. I believe with this ongoing effort, Putra Business School and MAICSA have contributed greatly towards a better local content and participation of trained governance professionals in the business and corporate environment, be it at the national or international level. Our strategic partners in the corporate sector, many of whom are corporations listed on Bursa Malaysia, have constantly highlighted to us that MAICSA members and their employees are their employees of choice to fill vacancies in their corporate secretarial divisions. Well, I'm extremely pleased to announce that MAICSA has 0% of unemployed graduates. This we have been achieving for the past several years. Even as I speak, we have a queue of employers waiting in line to employ our future graduates. Today, we can be proud to say that at least 60% of the company secretaries serving public listed companies are MAICSA members. Therefore, I urge most students to consider this valuable opportunity to obtain the dual awards granted by the university for the successful completion of the master degree and the internationally recognized professional qualification from MAICSA within the same period. Ladies and gentlemen, the company secretary's role has been evolving and the rate of change has accelerated in recent years. Their corporate secretarial administrative duties are still part of the role, and on the strategic side of the role, the company secretary is much involved in providing governance advice to the board and overseeing the compliance and governance agenda of the organizations they work for. The work of a chartered secretary as a governance professional is essential to the direction, governance, administration, and management of any organization. The public and political concern about governance, ethics, probity, accountability, and good practice is higher than ever before, as is the risk of it getting it wrong. To succeed in this climate, whether in the public, private, or non-profit sectors, it is essential to have people who are able to chart a course through wider perspective of legislation, regulation, and best practices. People who are authoritative, identify the problems, understand the issues, and have the expertise to provide the right solutions. People who will keep an organization on track and help it to prosper and develop, and also to act without fear or favor. Chartered secretaries and chartered governance professionals who are members of MAICSA are the qualified professionals who are specifically trained to carry out these varying roles and responsibilities. MAICSA members are awarded with dual designations that is the Chartered Secretaries, CS, and the Chartered Governance Professional, CGP. These members serve as governance professionals in organizations under various titles such as directors, chief executives, advisors, company secretaries, governance officers, executives, and many other titles. The question is, why does a listed company need to have a company secretary? Think about that. A company secretary has long supported the board of directors with a wealth of knowledge regarding all facets of corporate governance. A charter secretary or a CGP attends all the board meetings and shareholders meetings. Should any issue arise, they are the first go-to person for the board. It is more than a legal or regulatory requirement to have a company secretary in each company, as expertise in governance and broad experience are the pivotal importance to the company. Chartered secretaries and governance professionals, well, they lead and advise on the best practices in governance, risk management, and compliance. They champion the compliance framework to safeguard organizational integrity. They promote and act as a sounding board on standards of ethical and corporate behavior. And they balance the interests of the board, management, and other stakeholders. While charter secretaries as governance professionals have a very significant impact on the level and quality of corporate governance and governance culture within an organization, and a pivotal role in assisting the board to achieve the organization's vision and strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, the legal reforms undertaken by the government places great emphasis on internal controls, corporate governance, and corporate responsibility, flexibility in managing affairs of the company, facilitating compliance requirements and procedures, and reducing costs for starting a business, all of which comprehends governance. Good corporate governance relates to management of risk, and its central role is on gaining long-term success and sustainability of organizations. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, corporate governance is a vital component in today's business environment. It is a combination of legal practices, ethics, best management practices, wealth creation management, and foresight. And the company secretary rides at the helm in ensuring that these are implemented accordingly. However, corporate governance becomes even more important in the context of environmental crisis, global pandemic, looming recession, and social unrest, as it helps to identify and respond to the right risk. The crisis has, in many cases, accelerated the trend of integrating environmental, social, and governance factors into decision-making by bringing into focus both the role of business in confronting wider societal issues and the need for strong corporate governance. This has added a new horizon to the role and responsibilities of the board of directors. Apart from the academic aspect and from the government's perspective, how can we get companies involved in the fight against climate change? Well, the answer is to engage and involve the big corporations to help fight against this climate change and environmental degradation. We should ask, what can the companies do to help? Why must they help? And how can they help? Companies can assist if we engage them, including the directors, to help in many ways in various fields: agricultural sector, in the mining sector, in the manufacturing sector. So these are the areas that companies should be invited to help out. Today, leading companies address economic, environmental, and social issues in a way that creates value. The regulators, on the other hand, have set the expectation for companies to adopt better environmental, social governance, ESG practices. During the year 2021, the government and various regulators have initiated the following. BNM has finalized a climate change and principle-based taxonomy, the CCPT. Secretaries Commission had updated the MCCG to strengthen board oversight and the integration of sustainability considerations in the strategy and operations of companies, including climate change. The Malaysian government formed the Malaysia Climate Change Action Council, MAICSA, to address climate-related issues, and Sustainable Energy Development Authority, SEDA, released a National Low Carbon Cities Master Plan. So it is inevitable that governance professionals must be able to understand the need to adapt and find ways of managing risk and transformation, all of which requires robust strategies and the need to think ahead in managing this challenging risk environment. We need to be resilient in moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, as for now, I trust that you will leave this colloquium by learning and understanding new ideas and views from our participants who will be addressing you today. On this note, distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attendance at this colloquium and hope you will participate actively in this event. I wish you all a fruitful discussion and deliberation. On this note, I declare the 4th PBS-MAICSA Colloquium on Corporate Governance open. All the best and stay safe always. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Dato Akbar Moidunny, for the keynote speech and for officially open the colloquium. We are ready to start our session now. But before we do that, as usual, with the norm nowadays is to take a screenshot photo. Attendance, not actually attendance, just evidence that we are actually having this session. So if I may request all participants to switch on their camera temporarily so that we can take the group photo. Because Mr. Kenneth has been preparing this for many days, so we want to make sure that the handsome guy is there. Okay, I have two screens here, so I'm going to take the photo twice. So, okay, ready? I'm going to take the first page first. Okay, we're still waiting for some to switch on the camera. Okay, I think I can do that now. Okay, ready? Smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's for the first page. But since you guys probably do not know whether you are in the first or second page, so smile again. 1, 2, 3. All right. Okay, thank you. So that's the compulsory screenshot attendance. Okay, so just like the previous edition of the colloquium, we are honored to have two panelists from MAICSA. So allow me to introduce them first. So our panelist member, the first panelist member, Mr. Kenneth Khean, is the most handsome chartered secretary. Sorry, I thought there's a mistake there. He's the most handsome chartered secretary and fellow member of the MAICSA. He's currently a member of the Education Committee of MAICSA. He obtained his ICSA in 1982, law degree from the University of London in 1992, and certificate in legal practice in 1993. He has previously served as a council member of MAICSA and is currently the honorary secretary of the Malaysian Corporate Council Association, MCCA. He was also formerly an adjunct lecturer at University College Tunku Abdul Rahman. He provides consultation and advice on corporate secretarial practice, corporate governance, and conducts training on these topics. In addition, he is the co-author of Companies Act 2016, New Dynamics of Company Law in Malaysia, and also Company Meetings, Minutes and Resolution in Malaysia, published in 2017 and 2021, respectively, by the Malaysian Current Law Journal. So we have such a distinguished panel member here. And the second one, Ms. Samantha Chan, the Chief Executive Officer of Boardroom Malaysia, as well as the Managing Director for Asia Corporate Secretary Boardroom Group. Ms. Samantha Tai is also a member of the council, having been elected to the council in July 2022. Congratulations, Ms. Samantha. She is currently the chairman of the Technical Compliance and Governance Committee and Survey Task Force, and also the deputy chairman of the Training and Professional Development Committee and Corporate Governance Guide for Private Companies Task Force. So he's presently also, like I mentioned, is the CEO of Boardroom Corporate Services in Berhad and has more than 30 years of experience in corporate governance and the corporate secretarial industry, providing trusted advice on corporate needs to leaders in Malaysia and around the region. Ms. Samantha holds directorship in the Malaysian Investors Relations Association, MIRA, and Malaysian Alliance of Corporate Directors, MBCD, and is also a member of STAR UMT Thought Leadership Committee. So welcome to both panelist members. So now, before we get the first presenter to do his presentation, let me brief everybody on the format of this kind of presentation. We're going to have 4 presenters today, and we aim to finish everything by 12. Okay, so each presenter will present his or her research finding for 15 minutes without interruption. Although I'm a little bit worried about the first presenter, because once he starts talking, he cannot stop. But never mind, I will enforce the time limit. So followed by 10 minutes of discussion with the panelists. Okay, so 15 minutes of presentation, 10 minutes of the discussion. I will let you know when the time is near, about to finish. Maybe I will make some sound, something like that. Okay, to let you know the time about to be over. Maybe about 1 or 2 minutes left. If the audience want to ask questions, you may do so by writing it in the chat box throughout the session. Okay, so you can write the name of the presenter and then the question, and the presenter will be able to answer this question through the chat box as well. Okay, so the verbal discussion only by the panelist member, but the discussion by the audience through the chat box. Okay, throughout the session. Feel free to ask them anything throughout this session. So let's begin with the first presentation. I will give a brief biography on our first presenter. Our first presenter is Mr. Sharul Nizam bin Sabari. I need to mention your age, even though you put your age here, 40 plus. Okay, so the age is 40 plus, with 3 kids and Bachelor of Accountancy from IIUM back in 2000. He's also a member of MAICSA and he used to work as an internal auditor for Coco's Product Producer Alliance and also the OIC from 2013 to 2014. So he was the manager for Arifin Ahmad and Co, senior auditor for Grant Thornton, assistant auditor for Abdul Raji and Co. And in 2011-2018, he was the audit assistant director for Ministry of Plantation Industries and Commodities. Then in 2018 to 2020, he was the at the time also he was audit assistant director for National Audit Department, and then he was the Negeri Sembilan State Deputy Director. Now, since 2022 until now, he's the head of audit unit for Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture. Okay, but he didn't put here which party he want to compete in the next elections, but I think we discussed that in the chat box. So without much further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Shahrul Nizam to present his research, and the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Can hear my voice, right? Okay, thank you, Dr. Razman. Yang berbahagia, Prof. Dr. Azmawani, yang berbahagia Dato Akbar, panel members, participant, and all friends. Okay, today I would like to share the finding, or the study that I did, the effectiveness of board composition on the company's performance. Okay, as we can see, there's a lot of mismanagement by board of directors due to unclear role, and director finally affect the firm performance. So this one of the reason that I choose to do study on this topic. The objective of this study basically to investigate the relationship between various attributes of board, like board size, board independence, women on board, board meeting frequently, board age, board tenure, to the firm performance that I written on asset and net profit margin as my firm performance measurement. So I take 100 top public listed company in the Bursa, ranging years 2018 to 2020 from the annual report. So I developed 6 hypotheses that has been formulated to investigate the relationship between board composition and firm performance, and the result is 3 hypotheses is accepted, which is board independent, board mean, and women on board to have significant relationship toward firm performance. Okay, a little bit introduction. For the corporate governance means all processes connected to making decision and implementing or not implementing those decision, rule such as rule, laws, and code of ethics. So here we know that good governance has main attributes such as accountability, transparency, responsiveness, equitable and exclusive, effectiveness and efficiency, compliant with the rule and law, is to participate willingly and consensus oriented. Okay, what is the problem statement? I choose to focus on this research is on various settings in Malaysia as an emerging market country, because there is several cases of weak governance that we found out in Malaysia, such as currently the issue of scandal 1MDB and SRC. Then growing expectation that company must be transparent, high performance based, allow equal opportunity, and demonstrate diversity and integrity from society. So it is important to observe the performance of public listed company from the perspective corporate governance attributes, and it can disclose the strengths and weaknesses of the company. So this my 6 research question. Is there a significant positive relationship between board size, performance, board independent, and performance, meeting frequency, and performance, board tenure, board age, and women on board? So the significance of these studies, effect of board characteristic on business performance, as well as the practicality and theoretical importance of adopting MCCG 2070 before and BMLR. So we know better understanding of the right corporate governance structure and procedures. Okay, this is my conceptual framework. Based on the literature review, the research is based on assumption that board composition has significant relationship with firm performance. Okay, I show the hypothesis development. Positive relationship, board size with firm performance, board independent, meeting frequency, board tenure, board age diversified, and women on board. Okay, as we can see from the chart here, there is a 6 independent variable: board size, board independent, meeting frequency, board tenure, board age, and women on board, which we have 2 dependent variables, which is NPM and ROA. Then we have control variable, firm size and leverage. Okay. So how I get the sources from all this variable? So board size from annual report retrieved from Bursa Malaysia website. Meaning size, number of director on the board, independent, number of independent director, meeting frequency, number of board meeting held for the year, board tenure, tenure divided by board size, sum of total director, board age, sum of total director age divided by board size, and women on board, number of women director on the board relative to total number of directors. Okay, this variable of study. Okay, so as I mentioned before, in this study, to answer the research question and to test the research hypothesis, the data used will be secondary data published by the company annual report. The research instrument used this research is annual report of the company, which can be accessed through the Bursa Malaysia website, and the company annual report for the year 2018, 2019, and 2020. Okay, analysis and finding. All data obtained for the study assessed and analyzed using descriptive statistic, normality test, Bayesian correlation test, multi-culinarity test, and multiple regression analysis. So I summarize the result of analysis and finding. This for the descriptive statistic from 100 companies, 3 years range. The descriptive analysis of the research variable is studied from 2018 and 2020. And both dependent variable ROA and PM together with independent variable has been winsorized to reduce the influence of outlier. 5% value has been replaced to value 5th and 95th percentile. So the result for NPM, the average was 81.25% and the range from 1289% to 386.89%. Then the independent director makes up 52.48% of state board, which range of 20% to 90.1%. Okay, and the average of percentage of women on board was 22.54%, with percentage ranging from 0% to 60%. But according to MCCG 2017, a company board of directors should include at least 30%. So meaning for 30%, we not yet achieve the requirement. Then We test for normality test, skewness and kurtosis, which the normality test for the dependent and independent variable using skewness and kurtosis, all the independent variables skewness value were between -2 and +2, indicating that the distribution was roughly symmetry. Okay, person correlation test. Correlation is statistic measure that determine the association correlationship between two variables. So when a change in variable unit is replied by equivalent change in another variable. So this is the result. Both independent, both tenure and women on board all have positive correlation with independent variables. Both size, both meeting frequency, both age diversify, all have negative correlation with ROA. Dependent variable NPM has positive correlation with both tenure and negative correlation with other independent variable. So both NPM and ROA have a weak relationship with independent variable, independent woman, mid, age, and tenure because the correlation coefficient value is less than 0.3. Then I test with multi-culinarity test, which is the study demonstrate tolerance of greater than 0.1 and value of less than 5 for the variant inflation factor VIF. This suggests that independent variable have low multi-culinary, which is related to dependent variable. As the result, all the independent variable chosen are viable for further testing using multiple regression. So this is the result for multiple regression analysis, which dependent variable ROA. This dependent variable NPM. And I summarize the result indicated that all the independent variable, size, independent, mid, tenure, age, and woman collectively contribute to the dependent variable ROA and NPM with an R square value of 0.3609, meaning 36.09% and 18.16%. This means that the variant of ROA and NPM can be regarded as single variable dimension. Mid, firm size, leverage has a negative relationship to ROA, while size, independent, tenure, woman, age, firm size, and leverage also positive relationship to ROA. However, based on p-value, only independent, mid, and firm size has significant relationship to ROA. Okay, so the summary of hypothesis tested. First, for both size and firm performance, the percentage of both size has positive coefficient with ROA, but it's not statistically significant to explain firm performance as it indicated p-value of 0.4, which is larger than 0.05. For the second hypothesis, both independent and firm performance, both independent has positive relationship with firm performance measured by ROA, but has negative relationship with performance when measured by NPM. The third one, both mid and firm performance, the percentage of both meeting has negative coefficient with ROA and statistically significant to explain firm performance as it indicated as p-value smaller than 0.05. Both negative coefficient not statistically significant. Both age and firm performance has a positive and it's insignificant relationship to firm performance. However, both women on board and firm performance, the proportion of women director has positive and significant influence on firm performance. While for NPM, the proportion of women directors has a negative but insignificantly influence firm performance. So this summary of my hypothesis tested. For H1, positive significant relationship between both size and performance rejected. H2, positive significant relationship between both independent and firm performance accepted with mixed result. For #3, negative significant relationship between board meeting frequency and firm performance accepted. There is a positive significant relationship between board tenure and firm performance rejected. Significant relationship between board age, diversified and firm performance rejected. Significant relationship between women on board and firm performance is accepted. So I would like to conclude an implication, the importance of having a proper number of the board, independent directors, and women on the board with less frequent board meeting, as it has a significant relationship toward the firm performance. Having a large number of directors on the board can be disadvantageous and costly also to the management. So it would be difficult to effectively handle a large board. For independent director are meant to balance out any undue control or influence that large shareholders have over businesses. Board meeting frequency suggests that having more meeting could improve the quality of financial report. The high level of board activity led to investor perception that corporations have bad performance, concern that require attention of the board of directors. This one of these advantages for a lot of board meeting can brings to the micromanage. Then the last one, woman director bring different perspective, competency, emotion, advertise approach to stewardship, risk and reward orientation that will further enhance the board itself. Okay, that's all for me.
Thanks.
Doctor.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to invite the panel members to ask or share something.
Okay, let me start by congratulating Sharonizam for your well-prepared and well-presented so-called paper. I mean, this topic, effectiveness of board composition on the company's performance is very timely, I think, because I think there's a lot of focus now on board composition, especially with SC now also having put in this requirement that the board directors should also comprise women as well. And I think from what I can see from your study, your conclusion were very good. I think, especially, just let me check again what you've written. Importance of having a proper number of board directors. Yes, actually, you made a very good study in that having a large number of directors on board can be disadvantageous and costly. And I guess that you can see this in the way, especially some GLCs, you know, they put in too many directors who are really not of the required background. It's just because they were having some political standing or affiliation that led to all this sort of you know, negative perception about Malaysia. You know, at the end of the day, you can see that for the corporate sector, it has not been so much as giving bad perception about Malaysia's corporate governance. Most of the bad perception is actually arising from all this GLC, which really is really giving us a bad name as well, and also for academicians like Professor Ahmed Razman and the rest of you. You can see that we try to inculcate in students, try to tell students about the positive role of corporate governance, how it contributes to the company and economy, and as well as the culture itself. You know, because I guess whether you're Malay, Chinese, or Indian in Malaysia, proudly we call ourselves Malaysian, and we know that every culture builds on good governance. You know, no culture going to talk about trying to, you know, do something under the table or under this and that. You get me? So, and then the other conclusion was this: independent directors balance out any undue control influence. Yes, From my perspective as a practicing charter secretary, we do see that especially independent directors do actually play a very positive role. And if you have a strong independent director who's actually in that sort of having that sort of experience and background, really act like a so-called, or how we call it, a monitoring role over the board's so-called culture and tone as well. And and the best conclusion, I think I found that you highlighted that having more board meeting, yes, in a way it seems to be like good, but at the end it also actually means it's becoming micromanaging the company. And true, you know, the board should always be reminded that their role is not to be micromanaging or even managing the so-called company, you know. And perhaps this is maybe in Malaysia especially, this is to our background. You can see that Malaysia's economy driven primarily by apa yang dipanggil SME kan. So the SME, those are the people who are actually the bedrock of the economy. And dari sana they all graduate to become, let's say, public listed company or bigger corporation. But those directors, I think, forgot their background. They're still having that sort of mindset. Nak beli tukar, you know, they want to look into details, and then you can see that once the board starts into be micromanaging, you get employee, and then you got factions or camp within the employee side, and then somebody will be saying, actually I'm with this director. One group will be saying this director. That's where the whole rot comes in. And the last conclusion, I think, about the women on board. I mean, there's definitely throughout the whole world has given a lot of significance, and I think for Malaysian women, definitely it's time to step up, you know. And you know, so-called, even though you may have came out of the workforce just to take care of the family, but when you come back to the workforce, perhaps you can even contribute much more better now being a mother yourself, and you have gone through managing children. You know, taking care of children is a much more difficult task than even contributing a board. So once again, Shahrul, I think from what I can see that your paper is very, very well so-called research. You have put in all the coefficients as well as the analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Kenneth.
Congratulations. Yeah, I'm very happy to be present today. Yeah, to be able to hear all this presentation and learn a lot of things from yours. There's a lot of takeaway for me as well from your paper. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kenneth. Ms. Samantha, anything to add?
Yeah. So, Mr. Shahrul Nizam, I am fully impressed. I'm already 30 years in this line, but when I saw your statistics, fully impressed with the statistics.
Thank you.
And the research done. Yeah. So just that with regard to your conclusion, I couldn't agree more in terms of the correlation between the board size, right? In terms of not necessarily bigger size board means leads to better performance, but it would really be good if you could indicate, right, actually what is the optimum board size, let's say, right, for companies with different criteria in terms of, like, for example, market cap, right, then what is the optimum board size. But it's just that majority of the companies in Malaysia has very small size board, because majority of the public listed in Malaysia, I think high percentage, 70% is actually SME. So because of that, board size tend to be actually quite small, right? But so I think it would really be great, you know, if we can actually know what is the optimum board size based on your research studies. You also mentioned about board age. I think there was a question raised in the chat group. You want to clarify that? The difference between board tenure and the board age.
Okay, so board age meaning compared to board tenure, the board age is age of the board, meaning that experience may be from the different level or company, for example. But tenure, meaning in the same company. So the board can have the experience, okay, more experience on that company. That's the difference between age and tenure.
Okay. So that's something is a new concept to me. We have not really discussed that before.
Okay.
Then you mentioned about meetings frequency, right? So you that it could also lead to better quality financial reporting, right? So but your second line that mentioned the perception of investors. So I'm not sure whether you have that statistic to back up, right? Because it's just that personally, myself, I felt that we don't have enough board meetings or audit committee meetings.
Okay.
Majority of the company, right? So possibly it would be good if you can sort of like different category of board, right? You have the large market cap, you have the mid or the small size market cap, right? So the meetings, because why? You mentioned the perception to investors that there is a lot of problem in the company when you tend to have more meetings, right? Yes and no, right? Because what we want to avoid is company having meeting just for compliance purposes, but no real deliberation as to the strategy. I think many companies, for example, business plan, the tendency is they rush the meeting and they stick to the minimum 4 quarterly meeting, for example, right? So then you will have some other companies, but basically mostly those like PN17 company, every month they have meetings. So they are trying to come together and deliberate on how to resolve all those issues they are facing, right? So I think it's interesting, the feedback that you have. And of course, the woman director. So it's interesting also you have mentioned there, different perspective, different approach in terms of risk, reward. Couldn't agree more with you. So we have, because we attend a lot of meetings, there is difference, right? But it's just that it's perhaps if you can give the view, will that one woman director, because listing requirement have mandate one woman director for large company by 1st September this year, all other company by 1st June next year. But it's just that, the question, one woman director, will it make a difference or you need more, right? So that's the reason why corporate governance actually encourages at least 30% women on board to be able to make an effective difference. All right. So, but thanks. I really, really enjoy the research being presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kenneth and Ms. Samantha. So now we're going to have our second presenter. In the meantime, if you want to ask any more question to Mr. Sharul, you may do so in the chat box. So our second presenter will be Nur Haziah binti Samsudin, and umur 30-an. She's 30 plus, and with 2 kids and going on 3, inshallah. Congratulations. And she has a degree in agricultural economy from UKM back in 2010, and she has been working in Malaysian Agricultural R&D Institute, MARDI, for 11 years now. And at the moment, she's serving in the finance management division. So, Nur Haziah, you may start your presentation now.
Okay, thank you, Professor Dr. Ahmed Razman. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to especially Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Azmawani, the President and CEO of PBS, Yang Berbahagia Dato Akbar, and all the respected panels, and my beloved supervisor, sure Professor Dr. Ahmed Razman, and fellow presenters. So my name is Nur Haziah Samsudin, and I've received my degree of MBA in Corporate Governance from PBS, and I'm truly honored to be here, to be invited as the presenters for today's 4th PBS-MAICSA Colloquium on Corporate Governance. So I'm going to present on my research paper titled Employees' Perception Towards Governance Practices in Malaysian Agricultural Research and Development Institute, MARDI. Okay. So the table, these are the contents of my presentation from the background of my research through the end of the conclusions. And I'm going to start with the background of my project paper. The research paper is going to focus on the role of governance practice in the public sector. And what is public sector? It refers to the government control of funded institutions and agencies that are directly controlled by the government. And what is public governance? In Malaysia, is performed to ensure official operation of public entities, and as well as to enhance the trust citizens have towards institution, like openness, having transparency, accountability, and integrity is very critical when it comes to public governance. And for the public entities, they are adopting system and program to enhance corporate governance and integrity since the years since in the 1980s. They have clients charter, clean, efficient, and trustworthy slogan, the creation of code work of ethics, and the implementation of MSISO 9215. These are specifically meant for quality management systems. Okay, so the Malaysian government has also outlined the principles of governance such as stewardship, accountability, integrity, and such. And through practicing it in the national key results area, through Malaysian Institute of Integrity, and to the National Integrity Plan. So for the company background, the company I choose to do my research on its employees' perspective on their governance practices is MARDI. So I'm going to introduce on the background of MARDI. It is a statutory body under Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industry, MAFI, and it was developed in 1969, and it has the responsibility to perform R&D in agricultural and food industries, where its main objective is to develop technology that advances in Malaysia's food agriculture and local agro-based industries through R&D. So it has to develop competitive technologies, enhance innovation in the industry. That they have also developed various types of success in breeding new animal breeds, new crops, clones, and creating efficient post-harvest handling system. So its vision is to become a leading generator of innovative technology. And in MARDI, there are a number of units and divisions that have been part of its governance practices, such as we have internal audit unit, integrity unit, governance and legislation division, and also strategic planning and innovation management that is specifically to manage the innovation and to manage the quality compliance of MSISO by MARDI. So governance practices and management in MARDI are all across these divisions to ensure MARDI is on the right path of having good governance practices and to adhere to legal compliance in its service and deliveries. So these are part of MARDI success. So why MARDI? That comes to the literature gap of my research, and I found that there are lack of Malaysian specific studies that focuses on the relationship between employees' perception and its governance of public sectors. So it is a notable problem of literature gap that exists. So this study, I seek to fill this gap by investigating the employees' perception, and I'm using MARDI to pursue this aim. And it is emphasizing that there is general lack of sufficient empirical studies before that focus on that particular topic. It is employees' perception towards governance practices in the public sector, and it is based on these government agencies. Sorry. So this is the conceptual framework of my study that has two variables, namely employees' perception. It contains of 6 dimensions: management issues, stakeholders issues, personal issues, societal issues, customers issues, and overall employees' perception. And also we have governance practices as the dependent variables. And it came, this framework, before conceptual framework were also used to develop these hypotheses. H1, employees' perception in regard to management issues that significantly influences governance practice, employees' perception in regards to stakeholders issues, employees' perception in regard to societal issues, employees' perception in regard to customers issues, employees' perception towards in regard to personal issues and overall employees' perception significantly influences governance practices in MARDI. So the problem statement, the World Bank 2019 suggests that governance in Malaysia does not only lag behind of a developed country, as we can see in the figure 1, but it also has not improved to keep at par with the rising number of the middle class. So there is low levels of accountability and corruption areas in the Malaysia. Malaysia lags behind these high income countries, including countries that has achieved the status relatively. So, and also the number of complaints registered under the Enforcement Agency Integrity Commission has been on the rise since 2011, 2018, and it only declines in 2019, as you can see in figure 2. And the fact that studies done in Malaysia and most other parts of the country for the matter do not pay keen interest in the relationship between employees and corporate governance. And also it suggests that Malaysia's public sector governance lags behind those high income countries in terms of governance practices. And also according to YBhg 2019, one of the ways the public governance and system of the country can improve is by strengthening their human resource. So we have to focus on the human resource. So that is why I am focusing on the employees' perception in regards of the governance practices in MARDI to enhance, to focus on enhancing the competency and transparency within the employees. Sorry. And these are the scope of the study. I'm focusing on MARDI's employees as the respondents of the study. And the purpose of this study is to determine the perception of MARDI's employees in regard to the organization governance practices, and also the overall perception of the governance issues. This study will focus on identifying the perception in regard to these 5 main issues: management, stakeholders, personal, societal, customers issues, and the findings of this studies can be applied to all MARDI employees as well to other employees working in the Malaysian public sector. So these are the significance of my study. It aims to fill the particular gap relating to the public governance system in the context of employees' perceptions. So it will set a foundation for conducting further public governance studies that focus on the employees, as employees do have critical roles in both public and private sectors in terms of governance practices. So this study also provides fresh insights that future researchers can use to perform their studies, and in terms of benefiting the organization itself, this study is worth doing as it will contribute on MARDI's improvement on its governance practices, where it will enable management to precisely understand the impact of employees' perception on governance practices. And also it will provide foundational knowledge that may enhance the role of the country civil servant in enhancing overall public governance in this within the government agencies. And also it will may help empowers policymakers to have clear understanding of the impact of employees' perception based on their level of awareness, knowledge, and communication on governance practices adopted by their organization. Sorry. So through all these public problem statement, these are my research questions that I've built to answer all these, to have the analysis. The objective of my study. What are the employees' perception of MARDI governance practices in regards to management issues, in regards to stakeholders issues, in regards to personal issues, in regards to societal issues, customers issues, and of overall employees' perceptions towards the importance of governance practices in MARDI. So it leads to the research objective to identify the employees' perception towards all these to all these issues. And these are my research method that are based on adopting the Saunders Research Onion. And these are the research methodology. My population and sampling is from the civil servants of MARDI. There is MARDI's employees that are working in the headquarters in Serdang. And the sample size is 300 respondents, which I use a quantitative research approach, and I use and collected data by using questionnaire. And my variables are dependent variables, as I mentioned before, and the independent variables, the importance of governance practice. And the data collection method is by using Likert scale questionnaires, pilot test was conducted, and also everything is analyzed using SPSS. So this is the summary of the demographical analysis. For the frequency of the sample group, most of the respondents are male with 56.7%, and most of them is around 36 to 45 years old. And the education level, most of the respondents do have degrees, and they have 6 to 11 years of working experience in MARDI, and their position is mostly officers. So the validity and reliability test analysis. These analyses are conducted to assess the quality of the data and items used to make up latent variables, and to check the internal consistency of the items for every variable. So for every variables, I've conducted around 5 to 6 statements. So we have to check on whether the factors are measuring the intended construct variable. So the Cronbach alpha and total correlation of the statements are used to assess the reliability and validity of the measurements. And Cronbach alphas greater than 0.7 is considered ideal, with a total correlation greater than 0.3 is desired. So when these two are achieved, the items measurement are reliable. So as we can see, this means that as we can see in this table, the Cronbach alpha achieved for every independent variable statements above 0.7, and the level of internal, that means that the level of internal consistency is good. Most of them is good, and two are excellent. So this indicates that the good level of internal consistency between the items used to measure management issues, stakeholder issues, and all these are highly intercorrelated. So this means that reliability or coefficient of the items used to measure the independent variables indicates a good level of internal agreement between the statements. So it is measured that it's been measured to these independent variables. For descriptive analysis, it is conducted to aim on summarizing, organizing, and displaying data into more meaningful way. So the approaches use mean, median, standard deviation, and so on. And as we can see, the median and mean are close together with slight skewness. And in other words, the data are approximately symmetrical. So the bell shape, as you can see in the curve, which shows that data are approximately normal. So through that, we have established 6 hypotheses on the relationship between employees' perception towards governance practice in MARDI in regards of these independent variables. So the tests are performed at 95% of significance level, and the null hypothesis rejected when its p-value is less than 0.05, and the fitted linear model is used to see the statistically is significant. So overall, we can see that by using the scatter plot, all independent variables do have positive linear relationship with the proposed hypothesis, with the result of the regression model is all significant, with the p-value is lesser than 0.05, and for that it indicates that all these independent variables and the proposed hypothesis are supported, which means for example, for the first one, the management issues do have a significant impact on the employees' perception towards governance practice in MARDI, and also all of the independent variables like stakeholders issues, personal issues, societal issues, and customer issues all have a significant impact on the employees' perception towards the governance practice in MARDI. And then for the implications of the study, it might help the management to improve their policy making in regards to the governance practice in the organization itself. And also for the employees, it will seek to help them to learn more about the company's key issues and events concerning governance practices. And for the academicians, it may contribute to the literature on perceptions toward the governance and government. There were limited micro studies on where it is limited micro studies on the perception of the employee towards their organization itself. So there are a few limitations that can be highlighted for this study that can improvise to help in the future research, where it is the length of the survey questionnaire consisted only of 37 statements. That is to cover all the governance issues, that 5 governance issues before this that to be analyzed. There might be more statements that can be included from many other factors. So that many other factors can be explored further. So whether that can also influence the things, the many other factors that can be explored further that can help to influence employees' perceptions to the governance practices in the organization. So my recommendations for future research, where this research only focuses on organization, but it can be so it is limited. So it is recommended to further the study of employees' perception among other different agencies under MAFI or under all these ministries in Malaysia. So hence the finding will be larger. The sample will be larger and will be able to produce more significant relationship, and also to conduct comparative study among other factors such as culture, job performance, and the relationship of employees' perception with the organization's performance. And the conclusion for my study, based on the findings, employees' perception in regard to management issues significantly influences governance practice in the public sector. So it is recommended to be embraced by most of the public sectors. This is to help increase the stakeholders' involvement in the practices, in the governance practices and the operation. So stakeholders are also as important as the shareholders, and through the measures to the corporate governance is enhanced. Transparency are the very critical factors. Transparency by this within the stakeholders itself. So it is also imperative to acknowledge the board of directors as the crucial part of the stakeholders of a public sector, and public sector should maintain a high level of moral justice and honesty in its operation in order to help the employees to become more socially and ethically responsible, and to ensure 100% transparency and fairness in our everyday business transaction. And also public organizations should abide by the local laws and regulations in this transaction to enable caring for the local values and culture while making operational decision. And also it is recommended for us to do the research on public organization that focus on environmental issues, okay, to be included in the firm operational decision. And the last one, the issues related to customers issues will be enhanced. So this is to discourage increasing profit through unfairness, promotional means and such. Okay, that is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nur Hazia. So leave it to Mr. Kenneth and Ms. Samantha for comments.
Yes, just let me start by congratulating Puan Nur Hazia Samdudin for your study. Employee perception towards governance practices in MADI. First of all, of course, just want to record my appreciation to MADI, and all those who are at MADI. I think these are the unsung heroes of Malaysia as well, because too many times we've been looking at GLC, but another aspect of what we call GLC, so-called the privatized or the statutory bodies like MADI, play a very important role. I do have a client in agriculture, and they have always, to me, I've never heard anything negative about them, about MADI. They really appreciate the help, assistance, the researchers, the material given by MADI, and the support especially, as well. And it is really wonderful, to have such an organization, and so-called to speak, not tainted with any bad governance issue at all, like other probably statutory bodies. Now, as far as your study is concerned, you choose to go among and the so-called organization in which you're also part of and I guess that it must have been a bit of a challenge as well. Probably approaching your colleagues and then your fellow workers to get the necessary response as well. Not easy, and we were quite time consuming. Probably some people will be saying that you are jangan kacau saya lah, and give you some superficial reply rather than some in-depth reply. But the best thing I noticed about your study is that it is relevant to what we call corporate governance as well as applicable to what we call governance, corporate governance in general, especially a conclusion about employee perception significant in influencing governance practices in public sector. Not only public sector, I think private sector. At the end of the day, I think this is what I would call a tone at the top. How a proper tone at the top will always so-called cascade down to the employees. And if at the top you have people who are corrupt, leadership who are not leaders, who are not what we call playing their role, or having all this sort of improper motive, the whole organization will be affected by it. Yeah. So because I still recall back in the very early days, when I first came out to practice, that was towards end where I was appointed as the co-sec for one company. Probably you young guys may not know about it. In those old days, that company was called Emporium Holding Group. They were I think the precursor to today's so-called Pakistan. So that at that time when I was appointed there, it was already under receivership and management. And I could still recall my meetings with all those receiver and manager that, well, they found a lot of so-called bad practices or malpractices. And this was because the leadership at the top was not really so-called giving their leadership role and playing their role properly. And in return, employee at the bottom level started to take care on their own pocket. Yes. So that is really where I agree with your conclusion, employee perception. And then of course stakeholder importance, yes, definitely. You can see that the word stakeholder now is not just about living person, or organization. Stakeholder is now actually, we can more or less observe that it includes the environment, society, and then of course the so-called climate itself, so-called overall. We are not just looking at the stakeholders, our customers, our supplier, or our employees. You can see the word stakeholder has now become enlarged, going on beyond the natural person. It would include all these factors as well, being stakeholders. And last but not least was customer issue. Yeah, any organization, I guess, I mean, when we look at the word customer, it is not necessarily a customer who's paying us. It is a customer who are going to be using our services or who rely on us for services or support or whatever. Yeah, so a very, very great study.
Thank you so much.
And I think I took home something from your study, which is quite important and very relevant to my practice as well. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hi.
Kwanor Hazia. So fantastic research done. I think we need this more in a lot of companies, not government linked. I think this is really, really very important, because what your research has done, right, has actually indirectly shown how the value, the organization, right, can actually affects the corporate governance in terms of a company, and thereafter the performance of the company. Is really, really good research done. And the breakdown in terms of the employees' perceptions on governance in respect of the various issues. So you mentioned about management issues, stakeholders, customers, right? So that is really great in terms of the think your conclusion was that overall it was quite good. And in fact, there were 2 that was actually rated excellent. So what it generally shows, right, is that it's not just having a good policy, but it's actually being implemented and integrated into the operations, right? So I think that's fantastic. If we can do more of this research and we can actually pull out some of these other companies that was not well managed, I suspect then it will really flesh out a lot of red flags from your research study, and therefore, you know, highlight the needs, areas where a company and organization can actually enhance, and not forgetting all these stakeholders, not just at the board level, right? So, and you have also mentioned here that it's very important in terms of discouraging the what do you call this, value maximization versus profit maximization. I think that is very important because in the modern days nowadays, a lot of companies talk about profit increase, right? Then you have a higher return back to the stakeholders. So it's actually a wrong presumption. So what you have studied in terms of your research is not so much of financial, but the non-financial aspect of it. So we all talk about ESG, environmental, social governance, right? So you're actually hitting on that part, the non-financial aspect, right? And how important it is, which if you can get the buy-in from the employees itself, the organization will perform, right? So I think that's really, really great. And it's just that it's very interesting. I noted that you have this chart where it shows the complaints being submitted to the National Integrity has actually been on the increasing trend. So it would really be great if in this research, right, you could actually indicate the whistleblowing or incident cases reported for MARDI, right? Because I'm very curious to know with this, right, will the whistleblowing cases or incidents increase or is it reducing, right? Because why? Many a time when we do an audit on our clients, they'll say, Samantha, you know, I don't have any whistleblowing case. But to me, that is a red flag, right? So you have whistleblowing channel, but is the people, is it really effective, right? So sometimes when they report, they complain, it is when, you know, it is highlighted to the management that certain things need to be improved, right? So if you have that, even better to support in terms of the value of your research study that has been done. Right? So I think overall is really great. I think this paper is really, really valuable. If, you know, if this can actually be shared with all the other government link agency, because we all talk about corporate governance for government link, especially because of the public interest, right? So I think it's really great. Good job. Continue with your good work.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Nur Hazia and the panelist members. So now I would like to invite the third presenter, Izurin Fariha Muhammad Nizam. A bit background of her. She was a senior auditor in PwC and has experience in auditing companies in the healthcare, manufacturing and retail sector. While searching for a PhD placement, she is currently assisting in her father's consulting company as an administrative manager. Okay, Izurin, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Prof. So, Assalamualaikum and good morning to everyone. Good day to our honored guests, our panel members, and my fellow classmates. So today I'm going to present my project paper. The topic that I did was on women directors' impact on financial and sustainability of performance of Malaysian listed company, and it was supervised by Prof. Dr. Zubaida. So the reason I chose this topic for my research because board gender diversity is something has been discussed vastly in the corporate governance. So I think that the issue board gender diversity started with the gender equality, where we are aware that it is a part of the sustainable development goal, SDG. So, and Malaysia is actually moving towards actively to achieve higher result of SDG, especially in labor practices, as what Hazia already covered. So to break the bias of gender on the board, basically board gender diversity is something that helps women to be involved in the grouping and management. So according to the Malaysia statistics, we have reached the MGGI, which stands for Malaysian Gender Gap Index. In 2020, the result is 0.714, as you can see at the top right. So which if a score of 1, it would mean that in Malaysia, both gender have the equal opportunities and resources. But despite we almost reach to 1, the participation of women in workforce is still below the benchmark by 4.7%. So compared to our neighbor country like Singapore and Indonesia, they have better percentage of women in their workforce, like 60% and above. So on the MCCG 2020 monitor report, it was reported that there's 17.47% of women directors, and the remaining big portion are males. And also there's only 16.96% companies that actually have women on their board. So which is kind of low from what they targeted. So we knew that Malaysia actually target to have at least 30% of women directors on their board by 2016, but until now it has not been achieved. So I was curious why it hasn't been achieved, and for one of the subject requirement that I did during the MBA, so I had the opportunity to interview the company secretary of a listed company in Malaysia. So he said that the reason why most companies didn't actually have that a woman or adding women in their board is that they will not just want to simply add one woman and then just to comply. So they say that it is actually a long process to find a suitable director for each company. And I kind of understand that. I agree with him. But last year, MCCG has already updated that all boards should actually comprises at least 30% of women directors. And if the board is less than that, the board should disclose their action in achieving the 30% with suitable time frame, which I think is around 3 years, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So also the reason I chose the impact both on financial and sustainability performance, because in one of the colloquium that I attended during first year is that the feedback that I heard, they said that performance can be seen in both financial and non-financial, which just now Samantha actually mentioned that Hazia actually covering the non-financial type, while the one that Shahrul did is on the financial. So that's why in my study, I cover actually both. So yeah. So, and then the reason I also did this is because previous study also showed that there's a mixed findings on having women directors on board. So the objective of this study is that to see the impact of having women on their board on both type of performance. So will there be any difference on their performance if the women directors having higher education level, or if they are being older or younger, or if they have a better board experience, kind of thing. So the good thing of doing this study is that I think it covered both financial and non-financial performance at the same time. I also have added control and moderating variable while doing this research to control the result. And I have also used 6 years data from 2015 to 2020 in order to see the before and after application of MCCG 2017. So the firm performance is the dependent variable of this research. And so for performance can be measured both in financial and the sustainable impact. So we can refer this to balanced scorecard where there are 4 components to measure the firm performance. So I have chosen ROA and Tobin's Q as for financial firm performance, because ROA is the accounting measure and another one is actually a market measure, and ESG score for the sustainable firm performance. So as spoken earlier, I have chosen women directors attributes as my independent variable, where I look at their numbers, which is a percentage, their education level, and their age, and also their board experience. And then to make the result as more reliable, I have added size of the firm and age as the control variable. I have also used technical alliance as the moderating variable, which means looking at women directors with family shareholding. So because it says that big organizations usually adopt this gender policy properly, like without relying on family relationships, whereas the government-linked or family-owned kind of company is like they opt for their family members to become their women representative on the board, as they are more quite risk-averse kind of people, I think. So yeah, these are some of the empirical evidence being found in prior studies. The green highlighted one is actually a studies that use financial firm performance as their dependent variable, while the blue highlighted one are the studies use sustainable firm performance. So for studies that use both ROA and Tobin skew at the same time, like for example, Adam and Ferreira found that significant and negative relationship for both, showing that having women directors will not actually give added value to the company. While that study was conducted in 2009. But in more recent study by Alford, which is in 2020, they found that ROA is actually showing a positive relationship, while Tobin skew have the negative relationship. So as for sustainable performance, study that use ESG score showed that having women directors on board will have significant and positive relationship. So that's how I come up with the hypothesis, which is there's a lot of 4, and then with the subsets as shown on the screen. The next one, I'll explain about the theories that I use. So I have used stakeholder theory and corporate governance performance model. So the stakeholder theory was chosen because this theory stresses how corporations have the obligation beyond the fiduciary duties to shareholders. So this board of director become the prominent factor in mitigating all the agency costs that by using the monitoring the top management self-interest. Yeah, so in corporate governance, it says that the independent directors could actually improve the effectiveness of board oversight, and it can only be decreased with the implementation of a monitoring system, and this could be done effectively with female directors on the board, given that they are conceptually similar to independent directors, as they tend to be more risk-averse, as stated by previous study by Kamis, where he did in 2019. So, but as I think one of the comments just now for Sharul's study is that Mr. Kenneth mentioned that over-monitoring might actually decrease shareholder value and create more interference, affecting the performance undesirably. So that's why it is needed to have a balanced composition on the board via gender diversity and other institutional factors that will benefit the companies. So basically, MCCG has the 3 principles to achieve good corporate governance: the board leadership and effectiveness, and effective audit and risk management of the company, and integrity in corporate reporting with meaningful relationship with stakeholders. So yeah, the mixed result of this relationship is basically between firm performance and board gender diversity are due to the endogenous nature of corporate governance. So like for instance, the company's firm performance could depend on an action made by the prior director or the subsequent director in the same year due to the changes. So in most board diversity studies, it says that it is common to find the correlation does not actually imply any causation. So I have used data from Thomson Reuters for the financial data, such as ROA and the market performance measurement of Tobin skew, and also the ESG scores. So the annual reports of listed companies from Bursa was used to see the number of directors and also their attributes, such as their studies and stuff. So the population used in the study is the 75 companies of listed Malaysia firms that with ESG scores rating, with the study period covered from 2015 to the year of 2020. So from there, the way I choose the sample, I use the Kretsley and Morgan table. And then the next table, as you can see inside the slide, is actually how I define the variables. Next is I will talk about the analysis. So I have carried out a few analyses such as normality testing, descriptive stats to check if the data is okay to be used for the research. So I did a quantitative research. So as you can see in the table 4.1, when I did the normality testing of Kolmogorov Smirnoff, is that it been seen that ROA and Tobin skew has a p-value less than alpha value of 0.05. So it is actually a non-normal data, and for ESG scores, they had a normal data. Due to that, I actually carry out two types of correlation of Pearson's correlations testing. Is used for the parametric analysis, while the Spearman's one is actually for the non-parametric, which is the non-normal data. So from this correlation testing, I have found that some of the variables are significant and positive relationship with the dependent variable. But as seen in column 2 in table 4.3, the bold one, the independent and moderating variables have a significant and positive relationship, which I think it causing the multi-culinarity. So, and then similar as seen in table 4.4, because of that, I have conducted the multi-culinarity test just to check if the independent variable have high multi-culinarity or not, which is if it's high, then it may to actually lead to a misleading result due to the blur dependence of the relationships. So this table 4.5 show above is that the variance inflation factor, all of the variables is less than 5. So it suggests that no evidence of significant multi-culinarity. So from there, I actually continue to do the regression analysis. So for the simple linear regression, ROA and Tobin skew did not have any significant relationship with the independent variables, but most of them have a positive relationship. However, if we were to see the ESG scores, it showed that women directors percentage, age, and also experience, their board experience have a significant and positive relationship at 1% level of significance. So then from there, I actually carried out a quanti-regression analysis. Reason being I carry out this is because when I conducted the goodness of fit test for simple linear regression, as you can see at the R-squared and adjusted R-squared, each of them in the range, it was recorded that R-squared is around 11.3% to 31%, which is saying that the total variance is able to be explained by the variables used, which I consider it as a relative low because it is lower than 50%, as most studies say that it needs to be higher to be good. So although there's no specific figure saying that figure of R-squared to fit all models, it says the, correct. So this from quanti-regression, we are able to see this ROA actually do have significant relationship with the percentage of women, age, and experience. But the thing is, education remains as significant, and that is similar for Tobin skew as well. For the ESG score, it showed a good significant relationship, similar as the simple linear regression. So yeah, from this regression analysis, I already concluded all the hypotheses been accepted, except for the H2, because there's no significant relationship found with the education of women directors. So we could see that the trend analysis of women directors percentage in Malaysia from 2015 to 2020, it had a lower percentage before 2017, but a better and significant increase after 2017, soaring by 6% in 2018. Yep. So however, we could see that the percentage becomes stagnant in 2019 and 2020. The slight decrease made because the overall number of directors have increased, but the thing is, the proportion of women directors remains steady in 2019 and also 2020. So yeah, the study sample shows that up until 2020, the percentage of women has not reached or exceeded the optimal suggested rate of 30% as per MCCG 2007. So yeah, in conclusion, so for all research objective has been achieved. For example, the research objective number 1 has been achieved through the study. The table shows here is that there's a similarity with prior studies conducted. Study conducted by Chin in 2019, showing that there's a similar result. ROA showed a woman on board contributed better performance. For research objective number 2, we found that the education level and women directors relationship was insignificant and negative impact for financial, but a positive impact for sustainable. We found an opposite result from prior study conducted by Wu. They said that education of women directors maybe need to be aligned with the industry to show that they are capable to give a better performance for companies in terms of financial and also sustainability. So all in all, because we are restricting in time, I think this study is helped to see both perspective of financial and sustainable at the same time on the impact of women directors on board. We also could see that the improvement of implication of MCCG 2012 to 2017. The trend analysis showed that women directors presence is improving but stagnant as years increase. The Department of Statistics of Malaysia found that women actually have full and effective participation and equal opportunities through managerial positions, but they are partially available in local governments, meaning to say that more opportunity is needed for women to be involved in the local governments to have a better governance. And so I think the academician can use this study to understand the concept of board gender diversity and its impact on the firm performance in both financial and non-financial. And as Malaysia is actually moving towards the higher achievement of SDG, this study can prove that gender equality via board gender diversity helps to make economics of Malaysia in a better state. So I think that it helped to build awareness of how women can contribute a good performance in the company, and it also have to help future career prospect for women on boards. And in general, it's just for the working women. So some restriction and limitation I found during when I conducted this study is that there's a limited number of Malaysian companies that actually have ESG scores because it's actually quite new in Malaysia. So the lacking of population may not actually able to represent the whole population of listed firms in Malaysia. So, and then since I did not focus on certain industry, so I feel that this study may not able to decipher that clearly the impact of firm performance. So in future research, I hope that to get the higher population, I think we should actually compare with other ASEAN listed companies or maybe Oceania, and also to consider other attributes for women's directors such as their race or maybe their other than age. I'm not sure. Okay, but yeah. So lastly is to focus on one industry such as maybe only banking, so that we can see that the impact clearly by understanding the risk and also the implication of doing so. So yeah, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilzurin. So, any panel member like to?
Yes, Izurin, thank you for the presentation and quite in-depth analysis as well as the research. But just want to ask one thing is that in conclusion, there's something about women having negative impact on the financial market performance, and then on the other hand, positive on firms' financial accounting performance.
Oh.
What I'm not really sure.
Because I mean, in previous study, when ROA is actually an accounting measure, right? It's actually from internal, but Tobin Q is actually as a market performance. We are looking as a whole. So it's been stated that most of the prior study is stated that for internal accounting, we can see that is by having women directors is actually making the firm performance in financial wise is better. But financial wise in the market base, it actually doesn't give any how we get positive impact. It's actually a negative impact. So that's what my study found, and which is similar to the prior study as well. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. I think I guess this is also because the so-called number of women on board in Malaysia is not as many as the people hope for, and then of course, as far as Malaysia is concerned, the level of women on board is not comparable to like what you call Western countries and even some of our neighboring countries.
Yep, correct.
So I guess that also have put some limitation or restriction on your research work as well.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. But I think this is a overall very good so-called research paper, especially for the National Council of Women Entrepreneurs as well. And at the end of the day, but one very noticeable observation that you share with us just now when you said you had a conversation with that co-sec, why are there so few women on board directors, and that co-sec replied to you that the board doesn't want to just appoint a woman just to comply.
Yep.
They are looking for suitable women. But I think that the reply also is really arguable. You know, there are so many suitable or qualified women available to be appointed. I mean, and it is just that I think there is always this how do you call it, old boy culture or old boy network, whereby
Yeah.
the board of directors are still comprised of a lot of whom you know and who you know as well. This sort of relationship that contribute to this resistance to appointing a woman on board. But from my own practice, where I am a secretary for this so-called company, which is associated with the Ministry of Youth and Sports, I noticed that the women directors are really vocal and able to bring up a certain level of discussion to a board meeting, and their perspective and comments always bring a very, very good so-called dimension to the whole board meeting itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Which is, I think, like by adding women, it's like they will have a diverse kind of opinions rather than if like it's just all males, all boys, they probably have just one perspective. So by adding women, it will maybe creating another perspective for during the discussion.
Yeah,
So,
agree.
yeah.
Well, I got nothing much to add on to what you have so-called analyzed and given the thorough study. So I can only just say congratulations for a well done paper.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Hi, Israel. So we should probably put you out there to the market, you know, I think your presentation here is really well done. I think just now Kenneth mentioned, you talk about the feedback given that a lot of company mentioned that they don't wish to put a woman on board just for the sake of compliance, but more on merit base, right? We have even multinational companies coming in to say, it's actually in US, it is what you call that discrimination, right? Which is actually not allowed. And that's the reason, if you look at some of the company's policy, the way it is written, it is merit-based, right? But I think very well done, Izurine, in terms of your presentation. And I'm also very, very happy to note the statistic research findings from the financial and non-financial aspect that you have done to justify that actually it makes a lot of difference in terms of the woman on board that you bring in, right? Be it whether it's age or the board experience. It's just interesting to note that education, however, not so significant.
Yeah, actually, I'm quite surprised when I already got the result through the SPSS. But the thing is, I think from previous, like during readings, the reason because it may be because the education doesn't align with the industry. So let's say if like it's a oil and gas company, but then the woman's director being appointed is probably doesn't have the oil and gas education background. So probably because of that, the impact doesn't have much, So that's what I think.
All right. So I think that's very important because what it shows is, look, if you are going to bring in a woman on board just for the sake of compliance, right? And they are bringing in people they know, people they are friendly with, then this is where it will not contribute to board deliberation, right? So it needs to be someone with that related, not only qualification, but experience as well. So as you mentioned, like telco industry, you bring in from the telco, healthcare, you bring in somebody from the healthcare. If you want a full impact in terms of the contribution to the board's discussion. Yeah, so that's fantastic. And then you have also mentioned in terms of the board experience, right? So board expertise. So this is something also, you know, I think very good, because your statistics have actually shown the more a woman has experience in the number of PLC, they are exposed to different in terms of emphasis, right? So let's say, for example, you will have some who are very good in terms of strategy, but you have some who are very good in terms of risk subjects, right? So I think that is really great. So if it can be more specific industry and more related to the company, I think that is will really have an impact. Yeah. So I think overall is really good, fantastic. And as I say, is hopefully with this, if it can actually be shown to the market, right? Because again, I think like Kenneth mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of board is still male dominated, right? So there are a lot of resistance. So perhaps maybe your paper, if you can also go from the management level, right? Because when you say straight to the board, right, there is a lot of resistance. So what we do for our client, for example, look, if you already have a lot of women on the workforce, it's a matter of talent development, training them, right? Giving them the specific expertise like rotation and all that. And then they can be upgraded to the board level, right? So then perhaps, hopefully with that, right, you don't have so much resistance in terms of bringing in a woman on board. But having said that, we have a lot of requests now from clients because of the compulsory requirement now by PROSA. But well done, Idri. Continue with the good work.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you to both panelists member. Okay, last but not least, we're going to have our fourth presenter, Muhammad Na Min Bin Ramlan. He has yet to reach 40 years old. Okay, but already have 3 kids. Imagine once he reached 40 years old, has a degree in law, and his career in 2006 as a senior assistant registrar in Taiping High Court, 2007 assistant director for MITI, Ministry of International Trade Industry, 2014 as a principal assistant director for Ministry of Domestic Trade and Consumerism. And now, since 2022 until now, he's a principal assistant director for National Anti-Drug Agency. Okay, the screen is yours. You may begin your presentation now.
Thank you, Dr. Razman, Associate Professor Dr. Razman, MC, and also my supervisor, Yang Berusaha Prof. Dr. Azmawani, President and CEO of PBS, Yang Berbahagia Dato Akbar, Deputy President of MAICSA, our panelists for today, Kenneth and Samantha. And also, in contrast to the previous presenter, my fellow friends, my focus of the study is on the public sector in Malaysia. That is the perceived honesty, integrity, and trust toward public sector in Malaysia, the taxpayer perception. Maybe the study is not focused on the corporate sector, but corporate sector is also my respondents of this study, because as we know, corporate sector is one of the highest contributor to the income tax in Malaysia. Okay. A bit background of my studies. As we know, income tax is the largest component of Malaysia revenues. That is with 50 to 55% contribution every year, which will be the fund to finance the development of and policy and the continuity of people well-being. And then Despite the challenging year due to social and economic uncertainties, the 2021 Edelman Trust Barometer revealed that trust in all Malaysian institutions, government, business, media, and NGOs have increased as a result of assertive action in response to the pandemic. The literature on government performance suggests that there is a relationship between government performance and trust in governments. That is what my study is, the perception. Several scholars find that citizen evaluation of government performance is significant, associated with trust in government. Before we go further, I would like to review what the Malaysian government has done to ensure the good governance in public sector since 1970s. As we all know, that there are 5 years plan every 5 years in Malaysia. Malaysia also has developed a Vision 2020 to ensure that Malaysia can achieve by 2020, but now 2023, we may see. And then also many initiatives such as Bersih Cekak Amanah, penerapan nilai Islam during the Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, and also the Budaya Kerja Cemerlang, Kod Etika Kerja, Piagam Pelanggan, and ISO 19. And also Malaysia government also has established the Mampu Modernization of Management Planning Unit. Okay. This is my problem statement. After 14th general election, Malaysian government has changed 2 times. So I think we need to see the perception of the taxpayers especially towards the public sector in Malaysia. And also based on the studies by Khean, it is important to analyze the latest perception of taxpayers. Although there were many previous studies on trust and good governance in public sector, however, research on the relationship between satisfaction with good governance values and trust government in developing countries is limited. And also, only 15% of Malaysia's 15 working people pay income tax to the LHDN, Inland Revenue Board Malaysia, and less than 3% of those registered under Inland Revenue Board are tax compliant. While there were many initiatives taken by the government to improve governance in the public sector, Jamudin found that the element of good governance was not really felt in practice. This study was supported by Said Alam and Aziz and Khalid Alam and Said, which mentioned that there are much more steps to be taken in improving public perception, especially toward public sector accountability. The question raised is whether the current practices of good governance in the public sector are sufficient. Can the implementation of good governance in the public sector increase the trust among citizens, especially the taxpayer? That is the focus of my study. The research question for my study is there is a significant relationship between demographic of taxpayers, that is gender, age, level of education, occupation, and monthly household income, and perception towards the government. And number 2 is there is a significant relationship between taxpayers' participation in civil society and perception toward the government. And also, is there a significant relationship between taxpayers' knowledge and courage to report corruption and perceptions toward the government? My research objective is to measure the perception of taxpayers toward the government. Number 2 is to identify the determinant of significant variables toward the perception of government among the taxpayers. In this study, I focus in Kuala Lumpur, Selangor, and Putrajaya. Now, also to examine the relationship of taxpayers' participation in civil society with the perceptions towards the government, and also to examine the relationship of taxpayers' knowledge and courage to report corruption with the perceptions towards the government. There are many literature reviews that I have studied. These are among them. Okay. This is my theoretical framework. My independent variable is the taxpayers' demography, gender, age, level of education, occupation, and monthly household income. And I added the participation in civil society, and also knowledge and courage to report corruption. And then my dependent variable in this study is the perception towards government. To analyze the perception towards the government, I put in the perceived honesty and integrity in federal government agencies and the trust towards judicial and government and the judicial system and the government. The theory that has been considered for my study is the stakeholder theory, accountability theory, and theory of planned behavior. I made a questionnaire. There are 63 item survey questionnaire, and all the question must be responded. I make the questionnaire through the Google form, and I distribute it through WhatsApp, Facebook, Telegram, and also email. The one that has been responded and collected back is 273 questionnaires, but only 253 data sets were used because some of the respondents do not reach my criteria. Maybe they do not reside within the Kuala Lumpur, Selangor, or Putrajaya, and also they are not the taxpayer. This is the descriptive analysis, the demographic profile of my respondent. For gender, male is 57.9% is male and female is 42.9%. For occupation level, non-executive executive and middle management is the most they answer my questionnaire, followed by director, manager, and above, and also non-executive 5%. The person, the respondents with monthly household income between 8,001 to 10,000 is 29.2%. That is the most they answer my questionnaire, followed by the respondent with 10,001 and above monthly household income, and 5,001 and 8,000 monthly household income. Based on the education, the bachelor degree and above is the most they answer my questionnaire, and followed by the diploma and below. The participation in civil society, most of the respondents did not participate in the civil society such as NGOs or Kelab Rukun Tetangga or other satuan, which consists of 63.1%, followed by the which is 64.1%, followed by the respondents that participate in civil society, 6.9%. And also most of the respondents have the knowledge and courage to report corruption. Here we can see we have around 8.7% that mention they have knowledge and courage to report corruption, compared to 15.3% that they agree that they do not have courage to report corruption. Based on the age, I think because I do not make an age is age is here is because I do not kumpulkan dalam within the group, so dia pelbagai lah dia punya age. Okay. This is the finding. The focus here is on the descriptive statistic. Out of 2,133 respondents on the perceived honesty and integrity among the 21 federal government agencies in Malaysia, the question covered the perception of taxpayers toward the agencies as an institution, and also the officers and staff working in that agency. This table concluded that majority of the respondents, that is 78 respondents, agree that federal government agencies are honest and have integrity. This was followed by a neutral view consisting of 71 respondents, consist of 30.5 of the total respondents. We can see that the respondents have positive view with regard to the federal government agencies. In contrast, towards the judicial system, we may see that majority is in neutral views. But when we see with regard to the low and lower trust, when we add both, we can see that there is a negative perceptions towards the judicial system in Malaysia. So this will be my focus, and these two will be one of the focus for my study. Why there is positive perceptions towards the federal government agencies, and why there was a negative perceptions toward the judicial system. Besides that, I'm doing the descriptive statistic analysis on both the perceived honesty and integrity, and also the degree of trust. In general, the scores are given by the respondent on a scale from 1, or Likert scale, that is strongly agree to 5 strongly disagree. This table shows the minimum, maximum, mean and standard deviation for each variable. The mean is an important measure because it incorporates the score from every subject in the research study. Based on this table, the value mean for the variable are 2.64 here for perceived honesty and integrity, and 3.030 for the degree of trust. This result indicates that the respondent will mostly agree with the statement in questionnaire. We go further to the analysis. Here are 4 tables, cross-tabulation. This study analyzed the respondent profile using frequency and cross-tabulation analysis of the perceived honesty and integrity in the federal government agency, including the officers and staff. You can see the table 4. Table 4.5 here. From the analysis, the majority of the respondents believe that the federal government agencies, including their officers and staff, are honest and have integrity. That is 30.5%. To add this, 13.7% of the respondents believe that the federal government agencies, including their officers and staff, are very honest and have high integrities, which if we added both the percentage makes 47.2% of the respondents have positive perception toward the federal government agencies and also their officers and staff. Table 4 comparison also shows that there was not much difference because we analyzed between female and male respondent on the perception of perceived honesty and the integrity in the federal government agencies and their officers and staff. We see table 4.6 here. Table 4.6. Table 4.6 analyzes the perceived honesty and integrity in federal government agencies according to the age. According to table 4.6, age it was not included here because very big. Okay, so we see table 4.7 indicates that the perceived honesty and integrity in federal government agencies according to level of education. In here, I have mentioned diploma and below and bachelor degree and above. The table shows that the majority of the respondents in both levels, diploma and below and bachelor degree and above, agree that the federal government agencies and their officers and staff are honest and have integrity. We go further to table 4.8. Table 4.8 shows that the respondent from the 3 types of occupation here, 3 types of level of occupation that is non-executive, executive or middle management, and directors or manager or equivalent and above, have the perception that the federal government agencies and the officers and staff are honest and have integrity. We can see if we added both the honest and integrity and also the very honest and high integrity, the table indicates that 64.3% of total respondents in the non-executive level are very honest and have high integrity and honest and have integrity. Okay, we go further to the table 4.9. The group that believe the federal government agencies and their officers and staff are honest and have integrity are among the monthly household income of 8,001 until 10,000. with a percentage of 41.2%. However, this belief is not shared by the 10,001 and above group, when 32% of them that the federal government agencies and their officers and staff are dishonest and have low integrity. Based on table 4.10 indicates that there is no difference on the belief of federal government agencies and their officers and staff based on participation in civil society analysis. As the result of the survey shows not so much different tabulation between both groups. For table 4.11, we can see that the group with no knowledge encouraged to report corruption seems to take neutral belief. First, the federal government agencies with 42.2%. It is in contrast with the group of people with the knowledge encouraged to report corruption, where the majority of them believe that the federal government agencies and staff are honest and have integrity. We have done with the perceived honesty and integrity in federal government agencies. Now I go further to the degree of trust towards the judicial system. We can see here for table 4.12, from the analysis, the majority of respondents seems to take neutral view, as 33.9% out of 2,130 respondents choose to be neutral. However, when added the level of degree of trust and the negative sides that are low and lower trust, shows that 43.8% of the respondents have low trust toward the judiciary system. We go further to based on gender, the majority of the female respondents have low trust towards the judicial system, and which 3.7% of females have low trust and 10.2% have lower trust. However, majority of males tend to be neutral in this matter. We go to table 4.14, degree on trust based on level of education. We can see that 71.4% of the respondents in diploma and below, low and lower trust here, has low and lower trust toward the judicial system. Even though the percentage of low trust toward the judicial system is lower for bachelor degree and above compared to the diploma and below, however, it is higher in that category as 41.1%. Is the majority of the respondents have low trust towards the judicial system and the government. You can see here the table 4.15. Degree of trust based on occupation, it can be concluded that the majority of the respondents in the occupations have low and lower trust towards the judicial system, where 60.8% out of 20 respondents in non-executive level have low trust and lower trust towards the judicial system. And 40.9% out of respondents in the executive and middle management have low and lower trust. For the monthly household income, the respondent with monthly household income of 2,801 until 5,000 have more trust toward judicial system compared to other group. 45.8% of the respondents in this category have high trust towards the judicial system. In contrast to that, 50% of the respondents with the monthly household income of 5,001 and 8,000 category have low trust toward judicial system and the government. It is the same with the monthly income group of 10,001 and above, as 53.1% of respondents in this group have low trust towards the judicial system and the government. That is Besides that, I'm doing the reliability test. The Combra Alpha, reliability for Combra Alpha for the analysis for perceived honesty and integrity, and also the trust towards the judiciary system. This table 4.19 shows the reliability test for perceived honesty and integrity question to test and its reliability and consistency. Combra Alpha value for this variable is in which is an excellent internal consistency based on Combra Alpha rules. And it is the same with Combra Alpha reliability analysis for trust toward judiciary system. Combra Alpha for this value for this variable is 0.0822, in which good internal consistency based on the Combra Alpha rule. And then this is the Pearson correlation with regard to the perceived honesty and integrity variable. We can see that the relationship between dependent variable in the study and the independent variable, that is perceived honesty and integrity, it is observed to have mixed result of positive and negative, and this determine whether the independent variables are significant or not significant with dependent variable. Out of 7, that is gender, age, level of education, occupation, monthly house income, participation in civil society, knowledge and courage to report corruption, perceived honesty and integrity. For household characteristics of taxpayers in Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, Selangor and Putrajaya, only variables that are the level of education and participation and in civil society have significant relationship with perceived honesty and integrity variable. The level of education has positive correlation with perceived honesty and integrity variable, while participation in civil society has negative correlation with perceived honesty and integrity. We go to the correlation analysis with the degree of trust variable. This table shows that the relationship between the dependent variable in the study and the independent variable, that is the degree of trust. Based on the table, it is observed that to have mixed result of positive and negative. Out of 7 independent variables, that is gender, age, level of education, occupation, monthly income, participation in civil society, and knowledge and courage to report corruption. For taxpayers in Kuala Lumpur, Selangor, and Putrajaya, only 2 variables that are level of education and monthly household income have a significant relationship with the degree of trust variable. The level of education has negative correlation with the degree of trust variable, while monthly household income has a positive correlation with the degree of trust variable. This is the multiple regression analysis for both, that is for the perceived honesty and integrity and degree of trust toward the judiciary system. Based on this table, it is indicate that 7.6% of the variety in perceived honesty and integrity could be predicted by the regression model containing the independent variable of gender, age, occupation, level of education, monthly household income, participation in civil society, and knowledge and courage to report corruption. We can see that the coefficient, the table, that only participation in civil society can influence perceived honesty and integrity. The other independent variables such as gender, age, level of education, occupation, monthly household income, and knowledge and courage to report corruption are not significant to influence the perceived honesty and integrity. We see the degree of trust, the multiple regression analysis for the degree of trust. It shows that under this table coefficient, only the level of education and monthly household income can influence the degree of trust. The other independents such as gender, age, occupation, knowledge, and courage to report corruption are not significant to influence the perceived honesty to influence the degree of trust towards the judiciary system. So this is the hypothesis for this analysis. We can see that most finding that the demographic gender unsupported both for the perceived honesty and also the degree of trust. Same like demographic age, also unsupported. Same education, unsupported. for level of education for perceived honesty and integrity in federal government agencies. But for hypothesis, there is significant relationship between the level of education and the degree of trust towards the jurisdictions and government. It is supported. And the same with the monthly household income, there is a significant relationship between monthly household income and the degree of trust toward the judicial system and the government, also supported. And also the last is the participation in civil society. There is a significant relationship between participation in civil society and the perceived honesty and integrity toward the federal government agencies that is supported. For the other hypotheses, based on the analysis, they were not supported in this study. So as conclusion, most of the demographic variables that are gender, age, level of education, occupation, and monthly household income, including the knowledge and courage to report corruption, have minimal effect or are not significant on perceived honesty and integrity in federal government agencies, which affect the perceptions towards the government. This finding and in this study contradict with the studies by Daniel Kaufman, Judith, and Francisca in 2008. Which in their analysis of household characteristics in Peru concluded that higher education and age are associated with the higher probability of not seeking public service in which the perception are low towards the government agencies. And we can see that participation in civil society has a significant relationship with the perceived honesty and integrity in federal government agencies, which these findings same as conclusion by the Daniel Kaufman, Judith, and Francisca. Only two demographic variables, that are level of education and monthly household income, have a significant relationship with the degree of trust towards the judicial system. It is in line with the study by Daniel Kaufman, Judith, and Francisca. The finding also supported by the study by Moderator that suggested that low income leads to low trust. The study of relationship between demography and trust by Khean, Uludag, and Matthews in 2020 found that the high income group have positive effect on particular trust compared to the low income group. Based on a higher education, we can see that the study by Khean and Uludag and Matthew found that there more educated people tend to have more particular trust. In this study, the respondent with higher education have lower trust toward the judiciary and the government. It is in contrast. Based on further discussion, we can see here why the taxpayer in Malaysia compared to the when we compare between the federal government agencies in this matter is 21 federal government agencies and also the judiciary system, we can see that there are many incidents that maybe cause the respondent to have negative perceptions towards the judiciary system. For example, the case of Shafi Abdal, and also the case of Ahmed Razman, and also the case of Musa Aman. We can see here why the respondent have negative perceptions toward the judiciary system. And also the benefit of this study is implication of this study. In this study will benefit the public sector to understand the demand of one of the stakeholders of the government, that is the taxpayers. By understanding the demand and the perception, policymakers will be able to enhance, review, or formulate the best practices of good governance in public sector. And also, this study also can be utilized to develop an alternative policy tool to improve governance, such as strengthening the voice mechanism, including the complaint channel and press freedom. The importance of civil society, such as those as the third force in the country's development, must not be neglected by the government to improve the governance mechanism in Malaysia. This study also will contribute to the literature and perception toward the government and the governments, because in the meantime, there were limited micro studies on the perception of the taxpayers toward the federal government agencies. we can see here my recommendation, because based on the study, we see that there were positive perceptions toward the federal government agency. However, there are room to improve for the federal government agency, because government agencies, if you can see, they have minister in parliament that will explain many issues, same as Facebook and also many social media. When the issues arose with regard to the government agencies, they will answer immediately. If compared to the judiciary system, in which they have a limited space to explain why the judges come to the penghakiman, because they are limited space to explain, because judiciary system, as we can see, they cannot answer the issues arose by the public. So they must have a dynamic partnership and also support of the legal and judiciary ecosystem, because the judges cannot answer the issues directly, but the support system such as the academics and also lawyers can explain to the people or to the layman why the judges come to the penghakiman. As we can see, the topic nowadays during this time is in 2021, but now for SRC case, the Dato Najib was convicted, and but during that time, many people have an issue why Najib still can go everywhere like a free man, that mentioned by Tun Mahathir. So this is one limitation, because on my questionnaire, that is I mentioned 21 government agencies, maybe related to other biased information. The study perception may provide by result, and also I mentioned before, I only listed 21 federal government agencies that always deal with the public. And for future studies, maybe we can do a survey on the practices of good governance among the public officers, which I think has been done by Hazia in Mardi. And also the analysis can be done between the perception of the taxpayers and the actual practices in the government agencies to conclude whether the practice of good governance in the public sector is in line with the perception of the respondent, because my studies is only on the perception. And also this is my conclusion. We can see that on variables that affect the perception of taxpayers toward the government in Malaysia are that the level of education, monthly house income, and participation in civil. Toward the honesty and integrity among the federal government agencies and their officers and staff shows that agencies were successful in taking advantage that they have to make sure the majority of the people understand the policies, initiative, and program of the government. However, I think there is room for improvement, especially in the practice of good governance, to ensure that the people as the main stakeholders of the government will always get maximum benefit from the government. The perception of the judicial system in this study was slightly negative. Many factors contribute to this perception, and one of them is when the layman or the people do not fully understand the processes and the procedures of the system. The judiciary system may need to design initiatives with the whole ecosystem to ensure the people understand why the court comes into a certain decision. This is last for me. I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Na Min. Okay, now to the panel members.
Yes, I'll start by saying that Muhammad Namin, you done a very in-depth research and study on this so-called perceived honesty, integrity, and trust towards public sector from the taxpayer perception. Definitely, I think as far as the perceived honesty, integrity, and trust towards public sector is concerned, it indicates that correspond with, of course, various levels of society, especially taxpayer. But then again, probably for taxpayer perception, the limitation on your study is due to the low number of taxpayers in Malaysia and those who comply, who are tax compliant as well. So perhaps that would added to the so-called study as well. But I think this paper, if shared with the public sector, I think they would be at least be aware that what they can do to improve further the perception of honesty, integrity, and trust in the public sector. But generally speaking, I think again from what we call my practice and interaction with my client, who are many SMEs, I would say that the perceived honesty and integrity and trust towards public sector is not too bad. You know, I think because you were using a lot of I think studies from Peru, you know, and they were done in 2008. So, but if you look at today's perception, generally it's not too bad, but of course there is always certain particular government agency, which always have been in the limelight for the wrong reason. But thankfully, I think for the so-called public sector in general, especially so-called employees in the public sector, they are actually trying their very best. But always I noticed that probably from within the public sector employees, they have their share problem with all this, how we call it, political interference, and then of course cronyism in the background and whatnot, so-called pulling them back. You know, they want to do their best, but unfortunately, it has always been undermined by certain political situations or political circumstances, which really doesn't help them a lot. But have to give them credit for their doing their best. If not, the country wouldn't be running like now, is it? I think we have to recognize that. The other thing I think that especially the level education, between level education and trust, and then of course level income. Yes, I think there's a very solid study and research. And last but not least, of course, your recommendation perhaps is something that could be taken up at the public sector level, especially for your point about government sectors or so-called agencies should do more to explain and then to communicate, you know, especially what they've done and whatnot. But I think for the judiciary also, you pointed rightly out that they, due to the so-called their stature and of course their nature of work and deliberation, it cannot be just simply coming out to explain certain things. People got to read the decision that would be published. Yeah. So, but anyway, it was a very, very enlightening study, and I'm very happy to have received your presentation and witnessed your presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Muhammad Admin.
Yes.
Yeah, so interesting, really interesting finding. I find your reports even, debunking some of the other research done, right? Talking about the education and the income, how it actually impacts. So it is really a very interesting finding. I think it's very, very good. It's just I'm very curious because you have the rating in terms of low, honesty, neutral, and high, right?
Yes.
What is the reason for putting neutral there? Because I'm just wondering if I take out the neutral, right, will it throw off the result? Because you see, people when they do survey, right, the tendency is average, you know, neutral is yes or no. But when you talk about honesty, it's either you perceive as honest or dishonest. But again, it could be like what you mentioned, right? Because you only pick 21 agency. I'm not sure what maybe your input on that.
Yeah. Because I think my survey questionnaire based on the Likert scale, 1 to 5. 1 is most honest and honest and also neutral. This is the standard questionnaire lah, Samantha. That's why maybe the people tend to put neutral because because maybe some of them are public servants. Maybe they tend to put neutral lah because they're afraid to answer. But I have mentioned to them also that I will not reveal what is the 21 government agencies. But still neutral is one of the pilihan lah for the respondents.
Correct. So it's just that if you, let's say you push the neutral to the low level, right? Then you can see actually the findings in terms of the actual perception, right? So I thought that was very interesting.
Okay.
Secondly, in terms of the finding on towards the judiciary, I think like what Kenneth mentioned, you must give this to the election commission, right? So I think that's the myth, I think is very good because I think in some of the other research done, it was saying high level education tendency to have more trust, right? But in your case, it actually show otherwise, right? So I think that is really fantastic. I've learned a lot from your presentation today.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for both panels. Finally, we have come towards the end of the event. Thank you to all presenters, all the panels, and those who are attending this session. It's hoping here that this colloquium will be beneficial for those attending, especially the PBS, MBA students, alumni, as well as MAICSA members. We will upload this session on our PBS website via YouTube channel once it is ready. The past 3 colloquium already uploaded on PBS website, and hopefully we'll be able to put all these articles in a form of publication. Stay tuned for that announcement. On behalf of PBS, I would like to express our sincere thanks and appreciation to all involved with this event, starting with MAICSA, especially Yang Berharga Dato Akbar, Deputy President of MAICSA, and also our 2 beloved MAICSA panelists, Ms. Kenneth and Ms. Samantha.
Thank you.
And not to forget our PBS CEO and President, Professor Dr. Azmawani. And last but not least, to all 4 presenters and the audience. You guys have been amazing, and looking forward to see all of you in the next 5th edition, inshallah, by the end of this year. And for that's all from me. I wish you all the best in your career, in your study, and have a good weekend. Assalamualaikum and very goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.